Continuing on our Wi-Fi 8 explorations, I want to touch upon a feature which has found its way into the specifications. This is not something new. It is kind of retried or reintroduced, called as unequal modulation. And let's understand this a little bit more. My name is Shrikant and I'm with NanoCell Networks. So we've been used to MIMO transmissions carrying multiple spatial streams, AP to client, client to AP. 2 to 4 spatial streams have become quite common. SU MIMO transmissions are probably dominant, but there are MU MIMO transmissions as well. And generally, when the AP talks to a station downlink, uplink, we generally have the same modulation and coding on the multiple spatial streams. Of course, across users in a multi-user MIMO context, we can have one set of modulation and coding for one user and another for another user. Unequal modulation wants to go back because it was tried earlier, where for a single user, we want to try different MCS, or I should say different modulation type, okay? The coding rate being the same, but different modulation types. So this is what we call unequal modulation, or the acronym UEQM in short, okay? And advantages, of course, are primarily in some real life conditions rather than any peak rate numbers. And there are dependencies on some other techniques, and the advantages can be, I would say, incremental, as in the case of many Wi-Fi 8 features. So to understand this feature, I think it's better to just go back to beamforming, or what I call TX beamforming, as it's popular in Wi-Fi. I would say 11AC is the main point, even though technically 11N saw this introduction, but 11AC had the interoperable standardization, where a beamformer could be an AP or a star, could ask the beamformee to send feedback, and then use that feedback to beamform the spatial streams, so that even though it's going from one location to another, the different spatial stream could really experience different spatial channel conditions. So instead of falling back to the lowest MCS amongst these, why can't we match the MCS according to the channels that the spatial stream faces? That is been the main reason why this is making a comeback. As I said, they did try it in 11N, MCS 33 to 76. For those of you who might have still been in those days, hardly got used in practice. Okay. So why are we now going back there? Is also because beamforming now is a little bit mainstream, almost present in many products, if not all. So, and remember that we have squeezed many aspects of the phi layer in terms of what we can get out of it. So this is some of the last remaining things where we can squeeze some spectral efficiency, leading to some performance benefits. And as you can imagine, in the standards or the process, they did look at the various simulation results under channel conditions, and they looked at the advantage one can get by going down to equal modulation versus looking at unequal modulation with some different possibilities. So as you can see, it's not a blockbuster advantage, but you can see that there are some SNR ranges where it can have some advantages, primarily in some throughput or good put numbers. So definitely not a peak rate enhancing number, but possibly something which can help us as we are spread all around the cell and looking at some potential advantages. As with any of these techniques, there is a trade-off between the overheads that we might have to incur for introducing these things. So the standards explored to what extent of flexibility we need to give. So we are only focused on 2 to 4 spatial streams. We are also looking at only a maximum of 2 difference amongst the modulation types, primarily to curtail certain signaling related overheads. So clearly it has, you can say, limited real life-ish advantages potentially, with some constraints. Are there any challenges? So remember that in 11N, as we said, even though it got introduced, did not take off because TX beamforming was not really interoperably standardized. This technique depends on the beamforming feedback. In fact, this is only restricted for beamform transmissions. So we are very crucially dependent on the beamforming feedback. Our modulation choices now have to depend on this closed loop feedback. Nominally, we've been using open loop. People do have to tweak their rate adaptation algorithms. So we don't know, will everybody follow this, or is it going to be an optional technique simply because the impact on rate adaptation is slightly more deeper. So low-end chipsets, etc., might sort of shy away from adopting some of these. But overall, as you can see, these are some of the incremental enhancements that Wi-Fi 8 is trying on top of existing techniques. And let's see how well it fares in real life. As usual, you can look at our website for more information. We also collaborate with Wi-Fi Now Academy to offer courses and sessions at the events. Thank you.